Hi, welcome to another lesson in City Vision's Introduction to Christian Addiction Counseling. My name is Andrew Sears, and in this lesson, we're going to talk about how you can help find a practicum site or supervision site in addiction counseling. And just as a reminder, this free course is available at cityvisioninstitute.org. Now, just to frame this, if you're looking for licensure, you're going to be in a state that is going to have some requirements, and usually they're going to have 4 different domains. Sometimes it's 3. You're going to have education hours. Sometimes some states will have practicum and experience hours, and the difference is the practicum is tied to an academic course, whereas the experience hours is just under supervision. It's not doesn't have to be tied to a academic course, and then there'll be an exam. So part of what you're going to need to do is look this up for your state. So the whole purpose of this lesson is to help you get the either practicum or experience hours that you're going to need to get licensed, and to help you find a site to do that. Now, part of the reason why this is required is that the field of addiction counseling recognizes that, there's some limits to online learning, and there's limits to, even learning on campus. You have the head, the heart, and the hands, right? So head learning is what you can get from courses and books if you never worked in an organization on assignments. But the heart learning, we have a lot of courses that's what we're trying to do: journaling, reflective assignments, faculty mentoring. But there's part of heart learning that's living and working in addiction counseling. That's the supervision requirement. And going through counseling yourself. A lot of master's programs require that to graduate, you have to go through counseling yourself. And I think that's a good practice. And then the hand learning is living and working in addiction counseling and supervision. So that's actually would be more like the skills of what do you actually do whenever you're counseling someone, and how do you respond if someone starts to yell at you or things along those lines, right? So, the example I'd like to use, would you trust online learning for learning to ride a bike? Well, maybe not. Well, what about flying a plane or, counseling someone, And I think that ultimately, just like doctors are flying a plane, you have to have some supervision, and that's, what this is about. So, getting the practical, work, and you have practice flight time, that's the internships, and flight experience is, getting supervised work. So, seeking supervision for licensure, there's going to be 3 groups of students. One group, you're just not seeking licensure. So you do not need to, seek out a supervision site. Group 2 is you're seeking licensure, but you're currently on staff at a nonprofit or ministry, or it could be for-profit, that can provide counseling supervision. And you just have to make sure there's someone on staff who's a licensed counselor that can meet your state's requirements. And then group 3 is you're seeking licensure. You're not currently on staff or at a nonprofit or ministry that can provide counseling and supervision. And you're going to need to find someone who could be a counselor, or it's going to be really difficult for you to get licensed. So how do you find an organization? And I'll just skip to this slide. One is the first step is getting to the right person. So do some research on their website. For many organizations, you could just search for job postings of what you're looking for to find out, who's hiring in this space. You could do searches for Addiction Treatment Center or other organizations you may know. And then you call and you ask if there's someone on staff who handles counseling interns, and or you could say that you're looking for a supervision site. You're a counseling student. And you're looking for a supervision site. And, a lot of students I know don't like cold calling organizations, but it's an important professional skill. And to get a job, okay, what it's going to take you, maybe 5 or 10 hours to find, you might have to call 100 different places to find someplace. But, that's trivial compared to all the other work you're doing as a student. It's just, more uncomfortable. So the next step is, to interview them or to talk to them and ask them if they could serve as supervisor for addiction counseling students needing supervised hours, and ask them how their process works. So most sites, if you talk to the right person, they're going to know, do they work as a supervision site? Do they have a process for working with counseling students, and ask them how their process works. So now I mentioned there's a difference between supervision and practicum. So a practicum is where you're going to get academic credit for your work. So we have a course at City Vision's 436 course. So you can only take this course if you've completed Introduction to Christian Addiction Counseling, you have room in your degree plan for elective courses, and you found someone within a nonprofit organization, church, or ministry that signed a supervision agreement, or they have some sort of supervision. It could be your current employer, and you have to be ready to serve. In most cases, it'll be as an intern with this organization, volunteering 10 hours a week as a part of your course credit. The basic course structure is going to be weekly journaling and reflecting on work, a work log with about 10 hours a week, counting towards your course time. So normally a course takes 17 hours a week, so this would be 10 hours of that reading and material relative to the internship. So the plan is, moving forward, our internship course will be available every term and can be taken a second time. We'll also probably have a 1-credit course that could be taken that would actually help you in finding the internship position, but for many of you, you wouldn't really need that course. So now the last thing I want to talk about are licensure plan and career plan assignment instructions. So we have an assignment this week where you're going to go through and do a licensure and career plan for addiction counseling. And the first thing you need to do is make a copy of this by clicking on this, and then if you want, you could, after you make a copy, or you could just download it to Microsoft Word. Either way, you can make a copy. Now, the first part of this is if you're planning on pursuing licensure, then you need to fill out this part. If not, you need to explain why licensure doesn't make sense for you. Some of you may not be addiction counseling majors, so you could explain that, and then you wouldn't need to fill out this part as much. Then the next part is to go through and define the requirements for your state. Now, in one of the earlier forums, we had you go through and look it up on addictioncounselors.com. I would encourage you to go directly to your state also, because this website may be out of date. And you could also just Google addiction or substance abuse counselor requirements for your state. And then we want you to answer these questions. Which is the next level of certification that you plan to pursue, and what is it called in your state? Link to the detailed requirements or an application for certification. What are the education hours required? What are the experience hours? What are the practicum hours? What's the exam? Any other requirements? And then we want you to outline what's your plan to meet these requirements, and try to be as detailed as possible. So we provided some videos of what a good career plan and what a SMART plan means. So your plan can't just be, I'm going to graduate college and get my experience and it's done. Try to say, okay, this year, here's when I'm going to do it. Here's when I plan to get licensed. Here's how I'm going to get my supervision. And that's the next part, is what's your plan to get the required supervision and practicum hours. And you currently work at an organization that has licensed addiction counselors? If not, how do you plan to get the supervision needed? If you need to look for a job or internship for supervision, do a job search and copy 5 to 10 of the potential jobs or supervision organizations below. And this is where most students are going to get stuck, so I would try to encourage you to be more detailed on this. And then the second part is, where would you like to be in your career in 1 year, in 5 years, in 10 years? So some of you want to go on for a master's degree, and you might want to become a licensed professional counselor. So look at that, and if you're interested in that, then I would encourage you to kind of map out how you're going to do that. And if you're not an addiction counseling major, then you could do this just based on whatever career you plan to pursue. Now, the second part is looking at this book that we went through, Counseling in Christianity, 5 Approaches. And then we want you to realistically assess which of these approaches will be the dominant model where you're going to be employed, assuming that you're pursuing addiction counseling as your major. Some of you may be at a ministry and you're already working for a ministry that does biblical counseling. Many of you, I think this is going to be fairly common for our students. You may be very passionate about biblical counseling, but you might recognize that there's a lot fewer jobs in biblical counseling. So you might be a lay biblical counselor at your church, if your church does that type of thing, but you might have to get a job as a licensed addiction counselor. And, basically try to think through your career and, what type of models do you think might change? So you might try to start off as a Christian counselor, but you may, become working in a secular environment. And how can you best equip yourself to work under that model? So, for instance, if you're going to work in a biblical counseling space, you might take a lot of the deeper faith integration courses that City Vision has. If you're going to work in a secular, environment, then we have others that are more focused on certification. So you might go deeper there. And, again, for this question, if you're not an addiction counseling major, you might just answer this more generally, like how much are you going to be working in the secular nonprofit sector or Christian nonprofit sector or businesses. So, and then the last part is after you receive your degree, do you plan to become a master addiction counselor, a licensed clinical social worker, a licensed professional counselor, licensed marriage family therapist? If you plan to pursue, and how will you do this? So, and again, if you're not an addiction counseling major, you could talk about this, your plans to do additional education and long-term career plans for your field. So hopefully this is helpful. If you have questions on this assignment, please ask your faculty member. And again, share the free version of this course with other people or other people in your organization. Thanks.